Chapter 19. Creation Night Worship. We woke up from our experience sleepy and drunk with spirit food, and Jesus led us to a door on the side of our cabin. We entered it and went up a narrow staircase that led to our small bedroom loft. The first thing we noticed was the color of the room. It was a dusky blue with swirls of light inside the walls. The furniture, the bed, and all the bedding were the same color. 2 arched French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking the backyard. We could see the aroma angels moving around the table, clearing things away. We opened our closet door and found 2 sets of pajamas hanging on a door hook. They were the same color as the walls and had our initials, K and S, on the front pockets. The whole room, bed, covers, furniture, and our PJs were changing colors. As the sun went down outside, the colors went with it, changing from dusk to dark. There was no light fixture or lamp, no paint or color. The room soaked up what was happening outside through its many windows, changing with the natural elements. You have come to a place where you are comfortable with change. This is your changing room. It will never look the same way twice, Jesus said and disappeared. Then we heard the music. We were lifted off our feet as we headed toward the balcony. We floated through the French doors. We heard a glorious symphony of sound that became the atmosphere, and we could see the sound waves coming from a clearing way off beyond our backyard. A wave of music came onto our balcony and lifted us up in the air. We tumbled and floated on the wave as it carried us into the clearing and set us down among the throng of the symphony. We gasped at the sight and sound. Every creature, tree, angel, flower, river, rock, and anything else you can think of in creation, not to mention the things you haven't thought of, was making this fantastic night worship. We could actually see the waves of tones drifting and breaking all around us, rolling in all colors and sizes, swelling like the sea. We saw that all of the creatures and elements were not playing instruments, but were the instruments. Each had its own unique sound. Birds were like different pipes and flutes. Trees were strings and woodwinds and strange, ancient sounds. Animals were all different, familiar, and strange instruments, and the rocks were drums and percussion. It went on and on until I could never express with human words what was happening in that creation night worship. The colors from the waves were whirling, diving, and crashing into each other. As soon as they washed over one of the beings, including us, we would change into that color, add our sound, and ride that wave until another washed over us. The feeling we got as we changed into the color of the wave was like ecstasy unknown. Then we saw Jesus. The clearing was very large in circumference, and we could barely see him in the distance, in the very center of the symphony, which swept across the mountaintop. We caught a violet yellow wave and rode it to get closer to him. As we approached, we saw he was poised in the air, turning around slowly at first. As the music headed into its crescendo, Jesus changed into a light different from his Lord of the Army brilliance. It was still a light so piercing we could hardly watch, but our eyes remained riveted. He began revolving faster as he was transformed, spinning more rapidly as the worship continued to escalate. This caused the light to splatter off of him like big drops of water. When the drops hit one of the worshipers, it knocked them temporarily to the ground, where they remained motionless for several minutes. Struck with awe was the phrase that I heard, and every beast, tree, element, and angel in the clearing, including us, deeply craved to be struck by one of his sparks of awe. When hit with this awe, the rocks shattered into glowing pieces. Then each piece began to beat a new, fresh rhythm that joined in the din of sound. This is just one way the awe and the sound multiplied. As I observed the scene from atop my now white-yellow wave, I heard my own sound. It was like a very high violin chord shrieking up higher than any earthly notes from deep inside my body. My whole being, who I was in that moment, was this screeching chord that went straight into Jesus' twirling, blinding image with the rest of the magnificent symphony. Then I was hit. The last thing I remember seeing was a shiny, wet glob floating toward me. It hit the right side of my shoulder and face and threw me off my wave onto the ground. It felt like someone had thrown a blob of hot jelly on me. I was overcome with a strange combination of fear and joy, tears and laughter. I fainted. I don't know how long I was out. It could have been minutes or hours or days. When I awoke, the crescendo was still building. I could not imagine how this could go on, and I could not imagine ever leaving or wanting this to end. Jesus was now barely noticeable in his human form. He was spinning so fast he was turning into a tornado of light. He morphed into what looked like a star with shooting rays of lightning rods that were changing from deep yellow into the whitest light. We were barely able to watch the frightening funnel, but we couldn't stop. The angels were not as affected as we were, but started to bend forward like melted metal. We were all bending. As I looked across the mass of waves and creatures, I saw that Jesus' starlight was bending the entire throng into one low position. It wasn't something we tried to do. It was a natural progression of this true heavenly worship sound. We bent lower and lower. I watched until I could not hold my eyes on the growing star of Jesus any longer. In my last glance, I saw the star burst into a zillion pieces and flood the sky. At that exact time, I felt a whoosh inside of me, and Cameron and I, along with the entire throng, were flattened. We could not get flat enough. It was the best feeling I ever had, lying there under the Jesus burst, trying to get my whole being flatter. I felt a strange sensation in my body, so opened my eyes to look. We were all flattened waves of sound, ribbons of light lying out on the ground amid splatters of awe and trails of melodies. Jesus absolutely exploded as the worship glorified him. It also exploded in us. Spontaneous, simultaneous combustion. The biggest fireworks finale ever known to the universe. We would never be the same. We lay flat for a time out of time. Eventually, I heard a note that led into the start of a new melody. I sat up. Cameron sat up a few feet behind me. The worship was starting all over, and it was night again. We didn't know if we could take another round so soon after our first true worship experience, so we rode a small new wave back to our balcony. We were still pondering the amazing, awe-struck worship when Jesus rode a wave by our side and said with a wry smile, "That was just a low tide." We busted out laughing. We didn't know how long we had been on the mountaintop worshiping, and we realized we were very tired. We fell into our small bed, now the color of shades of nightfall. Jesus came over and tucked us in. "You are in the secret place, sweet visions." He kissed each of us on our foreheads as our bed covers, PJs, and entire room changed to midnight blue, filled with winking stars. We fell asleep watching our celestial coverlet as the crescent moon glowed at our feet.